About a year ago, we compared the new Honda H'ness CB350 against the new Royal Enfield Meteor 350. Now the idea back then was to see what both companies' brand new 350cc platforms were like. But the truth is, the H'ness was born to take on another Royal Enfield, and that's the classic 350. Now, there is a brand new classic 350 out there, and we couldn't resist putting these two bikes face to face to see what happens. The first thing that happens when you do that is that you'll probably end up spending a lot of time staring at these motorcycles. They're both such good looking machines, each carrying the design heritage of their manufacturers. The classic cuts a motorcycling shape that has fascinated a nation of 1 billion people, and while it looks almost identical to its predecessor, the finish and attention to detail is considerably higher on the new one. In comparison, the Honda is more of a retro modern machine. Where the RE sticks with old school halogen illumination, the Honda proudly uses an all LED setup. The Honda's instrumentation looks more modern as well, and it shows more data. But it's not like the classic is a complete fossil, because the top variant can be equipped with an optional Bluetooth enabled tripper navigation display. The RE's flat mounted tripper screen can be hard to read in direct sunlight, but in contrast, the Bluetooth system available on the top Highness model has no screen, and it only works if you have a Bluetooth headset connected. In terms of tech, the Honda takes it a step further with a slip assist clutch and traction control, although that last feature probably isn't going to do much for you on a bike with just 21 horsepower. Both bikes also have a USB charging port, although the one on the Royal Enfield is more neatly designed. In fact, when it comes to the overall finish, you can't help but notice that while both are good, the Enfield is on a higher level, especially in things like the quality of the chrome and the overall attention paid to smaller design details. Nevertheless, the Honda's lines are clean and very pleasing to the eye, but this bike is noticeably smaller than the Royal Enfield. Even the engine looks smaller compared to the Enfield's, and it does leave some empty space visible in the chassis. The upside to the Honda's compactness though is that it weighs a full 14 kilos less than the classic. The Royal Enfield is definitely a larger feeling motorcycle, but both these bikes have comfortable riding positions that should fit riders of most shapes and sizes. The Honda feels a little more modern with a handlebar that's a little closer to you and foot pegs that aren't quite as forward. The Royal Enfield, this is pure old school. You sit bolt upright, your feet are a little forward set, and the handlebar is low and a little further ahead. Another aspect that makes these bikes such close rivals is their engines. Both have a long stroke design with a 2-valve head and a 5-speed gearbox. Both are air-cooled and both are fed via electronic fuel injection. On paper, the Honda has the edge because its engine produces more power and torque at lower RPMs than the Enfield, but we'll get to that in a bit. For now, have a listen to what these bikes sound like. So the Honda is definitely the louder bike here, and it's a sharp sound that people seem to enjoy. However, it is worth noting that with the Honda, you can't shake the sense that it is a fairly synthesized sound that's coming entirely out of the exhaust. The Royal Enfield isn't as loud, but the thumps you hear from its pipe feel more closely connected to the feelings you get from that engine. Both bikes are very smooth, with the Honda being refined to the point that you feel almost nothing from its engine. On the RE, the sensation of a thumpy, slow revving motor is much more obvious at lower speeds, but the vibrations are kept well under control no matter how fast you ride. Speaking of speed, it comes as no surprise that the Honda is the quicker bike here. It accelerates faster than the Enfield, and it has an indicated top speed of about 135, while the RE tops out at around 120 kph. But we discover that the Honda has more speedo error than the Enfield, and the actual difference in top speeds isn't that much. While the Honda is quicker when it comes to flat-out performance, there's a catch, and it's a pretty big one. The H'ness has very tall gearing, and that has a big effect on the riding experience. With the Classic, you could just sit in high gears at low RPM and have the torque of the engine pull you along. This is something that customers in the segment love to do, but if you try that with the H'ness, you'll probably stall the engine. The gearing is so tall on the Highness that fifth gear is quite useless below 70 kph, and highway overtakes almost always need a downshift or two. Also, if you try going over speed breakers in second gear, there's a good chance that the engine will stall on you.
Yes, you could remedy things to some extent with a larger rear sprocket, but that will not change the fact that the internal gear ratios have very large gaps between them.
So yes, the Honda is the quicker bike, but you have to rev its engine to access that performance, and that's quite counterintuitive on a motorcycle that was designed from the ground up to offer a torque-dominated riding experience. On the upside, the tall gearing helps the Honda extract higher fuel efficiency numbers, and that's probably one of the bigger reasons why Honda made this decision. The Highness also has a larger fuel tank, so it will have a longer range. When it comes to life in the city, both have their plus and minus points. The Honda feels much lighter and more agile, and it has a very light clutch as well. However, the clutch feels almost like it came off a commuter bike and there's no clear bite point. Meanwhile, the Enfield feels bigger and heavier, and this applies to its clutch lever as well. On the plus side, its chassis is nicely balanced at low speeds, and the generous waves of torque are a joy in slow-moving traffic.
Neither of these bikes are designed to be particularly sporty, but they both have stable, neutral and very well-behaved chassis that are more than happy to take on a few set of corners. However, if you really enjoy high-speed cornering, the lighter Honda feels more agile, and it does have the edge when it comes to the sheer fun factor. Then again, that new Classic is a massive improvement over the bike it replaces, and it won't really be left far behind.
As far as suspension comfort goes, the Honda feels a little more pliant and it handles potholes more effortlessly. The Enfield counters with better stability at high speeds, and its plush seat is far more comfortable on longer rides. When it comes to braking, both bikes slow down well enough, but they could both do with better feel at the lever. And yes, rough and broken roads will not be a problem for these motorcycles. They'll both happily take you on an adventure into the mountains, and they're both up for a bit of fooling around off-road as well. When it comes to equipping your bike for longer journeys, Royal Enfield gives you far more options in terms of accessories. The company has a range of fully homologated accessories that include luggage options, a big windscreen, even more comfortable seats, larger foot pegs, and a whole lot more. In fact, the customization options available for the Classic are quite massive, with 11 color options and even the choice of spoked or alloy wheels. In contrast, the Honda lets you choose from 2 model trims and 6 colors, and there are a few official accessories available like the engine guards and comfort seats on this bike, although the backrest and rear luggage rack seen here are third-party accessories. When it comes to the sales and service network, Royal Enfield has a massive upper hand here as well, with over 2,000 stores across the country, while the Highness is sold exclusively from Honda's Big Wing network, which currently has about 50 outlets. As far as prices go, the base Classic 350 with a rear drum brake and single-channel ABS starts well below the Highness, but the gap gets closer based on the color trim you go for, and the top chrome model we have here costs significantly more. However, the choice is up to you, and all the Classic 350 variants above the Redditch model are more or less the same underneath the skin.
So, Honda or Royal Enfield? Whoever thought we'd be asking a question like that, but here we are. As it turns out, these are both very impressive machines, but they're more different to each other than you might imagine. Here's how it goes. If you want a retro-looking motorcycle, but one that's light on its feet and rides like a modern machine, go for the Honda. But if you want a truly retro experience, a bike that excels at easy riding and one that transports you back to simpler times, but without sacrificing on modern levels of performance, convenience and refinement, the new Classic 350 really hits the spot. About a year ago, we compared the Honda H'ness against Honda H'ness CB350. And now we have an all-new Classic 350. So we couldn't resist it. Your 350. Now the idea then was to see what. Okay. Now the idea back then was to compare what both companies' brand new 350cc platforms was like. Oh, come on. Can we not manage with just light changes? The new Royal Enfield Classic 350. About a year ago, we compared the new Honda H'ness CB350 against the new Royal Enfield 350. Okay, now I'm really struggling.